America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Jordan Bruno, Vice President of Job Creators Network.
You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Today, we are joined by Nicole Wolter. Nicole is the president and CEO of HM Manufacturing. In 2009, Nicole got wind that her father's company, HM Manufacturing, was on the verge of closing its doors due to financial hardship. She left her finance career to join the family business and soon realized that employees had set up a secret side business using equipment and materials. Nicole took over the business, and not only did she establish tighter controls and accountability, she went much further, implementing new systems and sales initiatives, expanding into different industries. And within 6 years, she increased sales from 80,000 to 3 million. Today, she leads HM Manufacturing as president and CEO. Nicole, welcome to Main Street Matters.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you guys, to be on, to share my story, to talk about all good things economics.
Well, I think your story is so interesting. You leave a finance career, you want to save the family business. I mean, walk us through sort of like how you ended up in finance and then the decision to leave that career and take over the family business, because it's so compelling.
Yeah, so I went to school for chemical engineering, but I did an emphasis with biomedical because I wanted to be a surgeon. So I should have known early on that I love to work with my hands, that it was going to kind of lead me maybe down to this path in manufacturing. But when I found out that you have to do a ton of schooling, and I do like to have a good time and I like to be social, I was like, nope. It's definitely not my vibe to go be a doctor. So I thought, what's the next fun thing to do? And I was like, oh, I love math. I love finance. So let's go down that role. And I did. And I was excited to do that. And I wanted to do derivatives and be on Wall Street and be that girl. And 2009 happened, and we all know how the economy was. And being an only child and hearing my dad's struggles and what he was going through, I said, well, do you want me to come help? Because it kind of seemed like that's what he was trying to say without saying it. And then my dad just said, well, but I need you to get kicked around a bit before you come in. So I did go work downtown on the Merc. So that was fun and great. Got kicked around a bit, some tough skin. And so I came in a year later. And when I started to really process what was happening around me, boy, were we in dire straits. But, I was never brought up to be in the family business. So I didn't know anything. I didn't know what machines we had. I didn't even know the types of customers that were a part of HM and what the industries were. So I really did learn from the ground up. I started in shipping and receiving, inventory control. I went into the front office to do more of the purchasing, down to doing payroll, and everything was pretty archaic. So everything was super paper driven. It wasn't like today's days where you have all of your ERP systems and you track and you monitor and you watch the analytics that are live. And so it was a lot of back and forth and trying to understand what was going on. But when I started to go into the accounting side of things, that's when it really started to become evident what was really going on behind the scenes. And so the more I started to question, the more I started to adapt more into sales and doing the cost estimation and quoting versus profit and loss on these jobs. That's when I really found out what was happening. And then, of course, to my dad's dismay, I always, I don't listen to him much. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I decided that I was going to hire a private investigator because I kept hearing about this competitor's name over and over again while I was doing sales. And that's how we ended up finding out that everyone out on the shop floor was my competitor at the time, that they had started a little shell business inside of my company using my materials, my customer list, my prospect list, vendors, my machinery, my packaging materials. And so at that point, it really did add up as to why all of our materials were being scrapped, why things were taking so long, why we were losing customers. And we really did have to start from ground zero. When I say that I showed up to the company and all the lights were off except for the office, that's how scary it was at the time, because not one machine was running and not one employee was left. So it was a hectic time.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. And it sounds like criminal. Were there any criminal prosecutions for it?
Unfortunately, no. My dad treated this company like a family. And so he never had NDAs. He didn't have non-competes. He didn't have disparagement agreements. He didn't have the things in place that today you could really go after someone for these types of crimes. So, but it was a good learning curve because, boy, we didn't repeat that a second time.
Wow.
And what does HM Manufacturing make?
So we are a power transmission components provider. So precision machining of gears, timing belt pulleys, splines, shafts, anything that is in an engine, pneumatics, semiconductors, anything that makes the world go round is pretty much what we do. So we've diversified ourselves from just food processing, beverage, packing, automotive to now aerospace and defense as well.
Great.
Wow.
Excellent.
It's nice to talk to somebody who actually makes real stuff, a real part of the economy. Sometimes those are harder and harder to find. Nicole, can you give our audience just a little bit of an overview of the challenges facing small businesses right now in this economy, and then maybe specifically any challenges specific to the American manufacturer like yourself?
Yeah, I would say COVID was a nice boost for American manufacturing. I think everyone really did see how much we relied on outside foreign countries for products. And so there was this nice initial boom, essentially. Now that is starting to kind of dissipate. It's interesting to see that because everyone was all about American made, American made, American made. Now with things slowing down, because it definitely has, I'm seeing a lot more pushback of customers going back to foreign countries for their products. So obviously that's not good for the American manufacturing sector. It's not good for American jobs nor the economy. And another thing that's an issue too is inflation. Things are so much more costly than they were a few years ago. I'm paying more for just random things, whether it's a piece of material, whether it's for outside vendors, whether it's even for the costs of healthcare and just little things. I mean, I just was doing my property and casualty insurance and it went up 15%. And it's mind blowing to me because where do you get that money from? Everything has a cost. And when I go to my customers, I say, well, we've got to redo our pricing. We've got to add this, that, and the other. They're saying, no, sorry, we're capped out. You need to keep your prices from what it was in 2020. And that's impossible because obviously, as we know, wages have gone up. Everything's gone up. It's so expensive to even go to afford groceries. And I think people have this weird conception that small business, like we're driving around in Lamborghinis and we have all these lovely toys.
Corporate greed, right?
Yeah, and we don't. On an average, I think a lot of small businesses only make a 6% profit. And so when you have to think about how you're going to keep your employees, how you're going to give them raises and bonuses and try to keep that aesthetic while staying in business, that 6% is barely anything. I haven't taken a pay raise in about 6 years, and I'm okay with that, right? I don't even make that much to begin with, but it's more about keeping people employed, helping the community, being able to do stuff. I used to be able to have paid internships. That has now kind of gone by the wayside as more things have become more expensive. You're not really able to help the community out as you used to. And that's a problem because when you're trying to get machinists and you're trying to get people to work in manufacturing, those are the types of luxuries that people look for. And when you can't get state-of-the-art equipment because inflation costs are skyrocketing, and so are interest rates, when you go to purchase a piece of equipment and that adds another $15,000 to $20,000 to that bottom line, it's really hard to make that next investment or to be able to hire someone else on the forefront.
What about from a policy perspective, federal or state, you being in Illinois, are there any challenges from the policy perspective coming down the pike?
Yeah, always. It's Illinois. I feel like I get beat up daily. If it's not from the federal side, it's on the state side. Yes, it's so much harder. Our corporate tax rates have gone up drastically. Our income taxes have gone up. They just passed in the state of Illinois another referendum of tax increases. It's actually going to be $1 billion worth of taxes, and that's going to really impact the small business sector as per usual, which of course, I'm going to have to relook at the types of incentives that I had for the employees to be able to afford all this stuff. My property taxes have gone up. Last year, it went up 2%. This year, they're looking at another 4% increase. It's mind-boggling. And so when you start to look at all of these things that start to impact a small business, you start to really reevaluate. Is it worth doing business in Illinois? Can you keep the employees that you have? Can you keep all these types of incentives for your employees? I mean, I pay 100% healthcare, but as year over year, I'm getting squeezed by every little thing that keeps coming at me. I have to start reevaluating those types of bonuses essentially for my employees, which is terrible. You have to look at layoffs now too, to try to see, like, is this going to be worth it? Do I add automation to try to offset all of these incurring costs because you can't really hire a person with all of that extra benefits that they need? And then of course, then you start to say, well, is it even worth having a business to begin with then at this point? Is it better to just sell because it's becoming more cumbersome to do business, not just Illinois, but just in general as a small business?
Nicole, you were part of our Tax Cuts Now campaign back in 2017 when we were working to really amplify small business owners' voices like yours, so that the legislators in Washington knew that we needed tax cuts and we needed them now. You were super involved with us. And of course, we appreciate all the time you gave, going to Washington, talking to legislators, talking to the media. Tell us how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act helped your company and the things you were able to accomplish, particularly in a high tax state like Illinois.
We were able to purchase $750,000 worth of new capital equipment, which meant 4 new jobs, which was super exciting. We were really able to get on the bandwagon of state-of-the-art equipment, automation, really start being able to gain some traction in like those larger OEMs that we could now start to produce parts for. And then with that came the really exciting part of the community. So we were able to have apprenticeship programs that were paid, internships that were paid. So we were taking kids from the local high schools and saying, hey, if you're interested on the business side or you're interested in manufacturing, we've got a career pathway for you to kind of get your feet wet and understand what manufacturing is. And that's exciting, not just for the young kids, but for them to kind of shape their minds around what manufacturing is in general. I was able to give bonuses and significant raises. No one in this company right now makes under $25 an hour, even at a starting wage. And I think that that's pretty incredible going back from years ago where people would start at $16, $17 an hour. We pay 100% healthcare, as I mentioned earlier, which is quite a significant expense for a company. We have a 401k and a match. We have dental and vision and all these exciting things that as a small business, it's a burden essentially. But we want to do that to really create this wonderful culture and be able to take care of our employees as well as the community. We've also been able to donate some of our old machinery to the local high schools and just donate in general for their new expansion on their manufacturing programs. And so when you're giving back, it feels great, but you're able to kind of grow this manufacturing industry, and you're doing it and you're proud of it, but you also have the capital to be able to do so. So not only from the back end, but also from the front end, you're able to make an impact. And so those Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was instrumental, not just for the employees, but for the community. I mean, I was seeing a lot of the team members come in and say, hey, we're really looking to grow to that next phase, that next tier. I don't want to just be a level machinist 1 or 2. I'd like to be a 3. I'd like to have more of a significant programming aspect to their careers. And so we paid 100% of that. And that costs money when you're sending people out for training. And of course, it's great for the company because now you can take on more intricate jobs and go after the bigger customers. But it all costs money. And to be able to do that, you have to have money in the tin. And so the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was just so great. We saw such a flourishing, not just with the team members, but for the company to be able to do more and expand.
The landscape of the labor market has changed a lot post-COVID. We sort of speak in terms of pre-COVID life and post-COVID life.
Yeah.
But pre-COVID, when you compare the two, has changed a lot in the labor market, and it's very tight. But there's also a sense that there are people who are not coming back to work. And, we looked at sort of some of the benefits that were paid during COVID, and there were people who were making more money to stay home than to come back to work. I'm wondering if you've seen a change in the labor market overall, post versus pre.
Yes. Pre-COVID, I do recall the moments when we were looking to hire. And the qualifications were, I will not take this job if you don't have more than 45 hours of overtime. And for me, it was like, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Now, post-COVID, it is such a complete change. People do not want to work even the 40 hours. I see more people taking off. I see more people doing the quiet quitting. I do see people just not showing back up to work. At one point in 2022, I did have a rotating spree of people, even if it was shipping and receiving. I went through 8 or 9 people because they would show up for like a day or two and then call off, or just come for a week and then never show back up again. And that's really difficult, especially as a small business, to be able to keep up with demand. I ended up losing a couple customers because we could not keep up with demand because you didn't have the right people at any given day for that certain section. Machinists, same thing. And especially when you need such skilled individuals to do what we do, it is so hard to replace. And so it becomes like this bidding war of like someone down the street's now going to offer them $3 an hour. So now you say, okay, I'll offer you $4 an hour. And you start to price point yourself out of jobs as well, just to try to keep your spindles moving. So that is also another issue too. I still to this day, I'm having issues trying to get qualified people because during COVID, a lot of the more senior machinists and programmers just said, you know what, forget it. I don't really need to work anymore. And so that's a huge void because you lose that talent, that wisdom, and that sharing of knowledge. And it's really tedious and hard. And so, yes, I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing other issues too, where no one really wants to work overtime anymore either. I know I said it's hard to get people to work the 40 hours, but when you do have certain projects and programs that you have to fulfill, it's really hard to get people to want to work more than those 40 hours. And so you're kind of at a rock and a hard place in manufacturing when you have to keep production going and to keep up. And so I feel like that's another reason why a lot of these larger manufacturing companies, the OEMs, are now looking to offshore again. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. We've heard that from a lot of our small businesses that, big change in the work ethic of the employees post-COVID. Getting back to Elaine's point on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, as you probably know, is expiring next year. Some provisions have already started to expire, including research and development tax credits and expensing tax credits. Have you felt the effects of the expiration, any of the expiring provisions yet? And what would it mean for you and your business if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act isn't extended?
So ironically, this is like such perfect timing. I was just on the phone with my accountants going over Section 174 and discussing the R&D tax credits, because right now we are in limbo, and it's instrumental to not have these. We do a lot of R&D for projects for our OEMs. And so in 2020, so 18, 19, 20, 21, great, wonderful. 22, we're now looking into 23. We're afraid that we're not going to be able to expense this. And it's really costly because labor is included, materials are included. You also have outside vendors and contractors are involved in this, and it all costs money to try to get to that next big R&D wave for your customers. And so we're working on these projects, and we're trying to look at this and be like, well, if we don't get reimbursed or be able to use this in some other capacity, we're not going to be able to do these types of things for our customers anymore. And that's a real big problem, because if you can't help your larger OEMs develop the next big product for them, they're going to go someplace else. And what that does for a small business and for people that are looking for jobs and to be able to create and invest in new technology and equipment, it's a big problem. So, last year we were slow, and now we're gaining traction again. But what I'm hearing is a lot of shops are very slow. They're missing out on that R&D development. They've had to let some people go. And so now when I'm doing hiring, I'm asking all these applicants, what's going on? You have a gap. Well, that's because they've been laid off and they can't find work. And so that is a scary thing, even though we are getting busier. When you start to look at R&D, which includes tooling and fixturing, which is a huge part of our business. When you do one-offs for the SpaceX of the world and one-offs for Boeings and stuff like that, that is hard. And we're concerned. And so I now have to go through all of my G&L, and I have to submit that. And we have to kind of go through this cost analysis of, are we going to be able to go through with it or not? And is it worth it to try to go through and see if we can get some of these kickbacks or not? And it's starting to become a problem. And I'm afraid we probably next year, if they don't extend it and they don't do anything in Congress, we won't be able to offer that type of capability for our customer, and that's going to be bad.
Wow. Well, that perspective is certainly needed from the front lines of the small business community to hopefully Congress hears that and can act on this, basic provision to help small business job creators like you. Where can our listeners go to find more about your company, more about your story, and anything else you'd like to direct them to?
Yeah, so we're everywhere. So we're on all the socials. We're on LinkedIn. You could also find us at hmmanufacturing.com on our website. We're on Instagram. We're on X.
Oh, wow.
And TikTok. So it's just kind of fun, too, because when we're talking about all the community stuff that we do, I do have a couple interns this year who are just excited just to have exposure. And so they're running the social media. So check us out there, too.
Well, that's fun. They can also find you on jobcreatorsnetwork.com, because we've done so many things with you, whether it's media or your op-eds or even just the recordings we've done about your story. So we'll send people to jobcreatorsnetwork.com to see your story there as well. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you for joining us on Main Street Matters today, America's Small Business Megaphone. And thank you to all of you for tuning in to listen. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcast from. And we'll be back real soon with another episode.